What's up YouTube? Back again. We're going to talk about this pre-sale crisis happening in Canada right now, as it is really spicing up. Basically, the pre-sale side of the game is there's just so much inventory on the market right now, and even shadow inventory too. So that's the inventory which is available, but the developers hold back and don't put on the open market. They don't want to flood the market with tons of property. They want to get rid of specific units and do a targeted approach. So a lot of the numbers in which you see of available properties for sale is actually way more because they don't include the shadow inventory. But the biggest kickback, there's been a few things. The biggest kick to the pre-sale side of things, in my opinion, has been the investors. So that's twofold. So there's maybe the investors who were purchasing a condo for $600,000 and then they were looking to sell it or assign it later on down the road for $700,000. You bought for $600,000, you sold for $700,000, you've made $100,000 before fees. Pretty simple math. Then on the other side, you've got the guys who were purchasing pre-sales and then renting them out and making a profit. Now, these two scenarios are all well and good while the market is increasing and property values are increasing, but that's obviously not happening, which we've seen. Condo sales have slowed down tremendously, especially these dog crate condos, which people don't want to live in. But the cost of building these has become so expensive that it's taken a lot of the profitability out of it. When you've got development fees, like labor shortages, material delays, shortages, construction loans at a higher interest rate, it just adds and adds and adds to the cost to build these. And then if you're an investor and you're looking to just rent out your property, you're paying a significantly higher amount on the mortgage now because the price of the home is expensive, or more expensive than what it was. You're paying higher interest because interest rates are higher. Your maintenance fees are pretty substantial. And FYI, when you buy a pre-sale and you are told what your maintenance fees are going to be, expect them to go up significantly because it's just a selling point to the building. It doesn't actually cover the operating expenses. And so you've got all of these factors playing in, which just, again, it just eats and eats and eats away at the profit in which these guys can get. And so why you're not going to invest in somewhere if you're dropping $5,000 a month, the rental income is only say $3,500 or $4,000. It just doesn't make sense. That's now playing out on the resale side of the market because all these people who previously purchased the pre-sales are now trying to sell them, both end users who can't complete on the properties, they're losing deposits, including the speculators and investors as well. That's why you're hearing about all of these people who are walking away from deposits, why you're hearing this talk about blanket appraisals. That's another video if you want to watch that one. All of these developers are now supposedly suing these people, but that's not actually going to be a profitable business model. Like, they don't have the resources and the funds in order to keep doing that. So we just keep building and building on inventory. More stuff is going to be completing and more stuff is going to be added on. I think they even said today is Monday, May 5th, that they're expecting another 10% drop in condos in Canada over the next year. Condos have already been hit pretty significantly as well. So that's massive. As well as the investor side of things though, it's just become very expensive for these guys to build these units. So the end users are paying a premium because, again, the labor costs are expensive, the development fees. If you've got, say, $150,000, $200,000 worth of development fees that the developer has to pay, that's not just going to be passed up, that's going to be passed along to the end user. So these are things to add to like sewer, water lines, local resources and things to cope with the additional influx of people. And then there's the development wait line as well. It takes so long to actually get permits, to actually put shovels into the ground. So it just adds and adds to the cost. And unfortunately, pre-sales, where they're being hit even harder now is because they are priced heavily on what the developer has had to pay. So what did they pay for the land? All of these additional costs that I just mentioned out. What is their break-even point? And then of course they need to make profit on top of that. Whereas if you're buying a resale property, you're just looking at, you're buying unit 902 in 1313 Smith Street. You're just going to look at what 1402 sold for or 1202 sold for, and that's your price. Pre-sale condos unfortunately don't have that flexibility because they're reliant upon what somebody paid for them previously. And whenever you're in this scenario, those fees are always typically higher. So it's created a huge problem for them because they want to reduce in price, but they can't. I currently have one right now, which fingers crossed is going to be sold tomorrow. And if you look at our price versus what the developer is charging and what they have to charge because of their fees, we're $250,000 cheaper than the developer. And that's before you even bring in GST. And partly because they're stuck at that number because of the fees in which they have to pay. They don't want to take that hit. Whereas obviously on the resale side of things, we have more flexibility and we'll actually move the product. So things are going to get really bumpy. I think the other thing that's really taken effect, and I'm kind of glad at this as well, people have just kind of said, look, enough is enough. We're not going to live in these shitty dog crate condos that are tiny, that, you know, that are essentially like prison cells. So you've got a 550 square foot unit, sometimes even less, with 100 square feet of hallway that is just wasted space. So you're living in 300 square foot. It's awful. I've been looking at a couple in Coquitlam, Vancouver recently, and I mean, you're looking at ones that are 370 square feet, and you're paying, you know, close to $1 million for them. It's absolutely insane. So we're going to see what's going to happen with these moving forward. But there are some key takeaways and some key learning things here. I think if you're a speculator, you've got to realize that the market is not always going up. If you're taking on that risk, you've got to be prepared to close. Otherwise, it's going to get really bad for you. Developers, you've got to stop building these dog crate condos. People are not interested in them and people are moving away from them. And government, you need to work with developers here. I'm all for businesses. Obviously, of course, they're always going to try and make money. But when you're forcing them into thinking more and more that way because they've been spending so much on development fees, waiting for permits, delays, construction costs, everything, they have no choice but to go heavily just on profit rather than functionality. Hopefully the people who are all involved in this can learn and we can move forward, but time will tell. See you next time, guys. If you found this video helpful, please do smash that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.